Well, hello to my wonderful subscribers. I'm continuing to read, big surprise, for entertainment and spiritual purposes only, to perhaps demystify astrology, even though the 6 of the houses have new rulership since the last strawberry full moon. There are still many valuable lessons and clues that we can gather from our personal astrology and when we chose to avail ourselves of a certain planet and a certain doorway with which to enter. Because each of these planets are, if we think of them as chakras in a larger solar system, and if we think of them as schools through which we learn and teach, it opens up some new questions. It triggers curiosity that you might have. So there are always clues, and leave what resonates for you, and take what resonates for you and leave the rest. And thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. So let's read about Saturn. Saturn represents the outermost bounds of the soul's journey into matter, where it must learn to use the divine power within it to bring order out of chaos, beauty out of ugliness, and peace out of strife. Saturn gives the soul the will to plow the field and to sow the seed and then to harvest the golden grain. One might almost say that it is through the focus of Saturn, which, with its limiting rings, that the fire of the divine spirit is drawn deeply into matter in order to individualize. Saturn is the planet of developing selfhood, which is why in the young and inexperienced soul, its powerful rays will often induce great selfishness. When strong, it gives the soul the will and determination to achieve its goal, no matter at what cost, and to focus all its strength, all its creative powers on the attainment of an objective. The soul, having attained its goal, can then see how wise or foolish have been its endeavors. Saturn, through its air sign Aquarius, is linked with the 11th house of the horoscope, the house of desires and hopes and wishes. This is the astrological indication that through the will and concentrated thought power, the soul can achieve or obtain anything it wants at a price. I'm going to interject something. There was an actor, Maddie, that I just loved. And I didn't really realize how much I loved Matthew Perry until he walked on. And I read his memoir, and in it he mentioned what he had asked of Spirit, that he be famous. And he spoke of the cost. That just popped into my mind, so I raise a hand in respect and affection for that soul who's walked on. He did so much good and added so much joy and laughter while he was here. And Robin, oh goodness, I adore Robin Williams. I felt his energy come to me once after he passed. It was months later. He said, comedy is a Claire. And that rang true for me. Often great souls who have known great sorrow also are able to tap into that Claire. So don't go chasing sorrow by any means, but it gives an appreciation for the Saturn and its elements. So let's read on. When the Saturn ray is weak, the willpower is not well focused, and the soul is at the mercy of its feelings and impulses, responding to every passing fancy. Often such people come under the domination of stronger characters, or even end up parasitical in their dependence upon others. They lack foresight. They are irresponsible. They just cannot cope. They tend to drift helplessly through life. Under Saturn's ray, the will of the soul has to grow strong. First is self-will, the will to individualize as a separate entity, to realize its own inner potential. In young souls, this gives a strong instinct for self-preservation, which may be expressed in mistaken and foolish ways according to the plane on which Saturn is chiefly manifesting during the incarnation. Thus, through fear of physical want, all the efforts of the incarnation may be devoted to the accumulation of money and preservation of property, for money gives power and apparent security. Security on the emotional plane may be sought in the domination of others through their feelings, a kind of emotional blackmail, and mental security may be sought by acquisition of knowledge. At a certain stage of self-development, the soul believes sincerely that the end justifies the means, and the will is relentlessly directed towards getting its own way, overriding others by physical, mental, or emotional domination. Difficult karma then accumulates, which has to be met and balanced through humble and loving service as the soul takes again the homeward path towards reunion with the divine parents. Through his exaltation in Libra, the Venus sign of balance, symmetry, and beauty, Saturn epitomizes the fourth ray, which gives to its children an instinctive response to beauty, and a desire to create and perpetuate that eternal beauty which can only be found in balance and equilibrium. It may seem strange to link the apparent dark, heavy influence of Saturn with the ray of beauty until one realizes the immense amount of hard work, discipline, dedication, and concentration which is required to produce real beauty in any field of endeavor. The fourth ray marks the point of balance between the outpouring of life and creativity into matter and the slow transformation of matter into spirit. As previously stated, it is not easy to assign colors to the rays and planets. Authorities differ, and the colors vary according to the plane on which the rays are manifesting. White Eagle allots the green ray to Saturn. It is interesting that this color is also often allotted to his polar opposite, the moon. In numerology, it is also given to the number 2, the number of the moon. Saturn's number is 8, the cube of 2. The moon symbolizes the soul of mankind, and the task of the angels of Saturn is to shape and mold the soul temple into the perfect balance of body, soul, and spirit, which is symbolized by the cube. That is brand new information to me. I think of things in the Native American wheel, the medicine wheel, where the east is where the sun rises, and also childhood, and south is the full of day, and like when we're raising our children, and west is looking within, in the midlife, getting older, and north is looking for wisdom and old age and transition. I've always thought of it as a wheel, a circle. I am more comfortable with those, apparently. Back to the book. Picture the cool restfulness of a woodland glade on a hot day, with a vista of miles of open downland stretching away to the sea, with the cloud shadows racing over the hills, and the dark woodland giving wonderfully varied shades of color. See a buttercup field, a hedgerow, and then picture any of these without green as a background color. Immediately the effect would change. The sense of harmony and restfulness would be absent, and nature's restorative power not nearly so apparent. This point is well confirmed by the relief which we feel when, after the dazzling whiteness of a snowbound countryside, the thaw again reveals the green of the grass. Meditation upon the green countryside and its meaning for man will give some idea of the function of the green race of Saturn's influence. When fully understood, points the way to harmony and brotherhood. Persons coming strongly under this ray are always creators of harmony, no matter whether this manifests on the physical plane in a neat, well-ordered environment, or on the mental or emotional planes in a harmonious relationship with Creator. One of the most notable characteristics of green ray people is a restfulness, poise, and tranquility, which has the same effect upon their comrades as the cool greenness of nature, and tact and diplomacy seem to be inherent in their character. The beauty of the earth and the heavens arouses in souls on this ray a sense of reverence and worship, for they strive earnestly and continually to bring beauty and harmony as they see it into manifestation. Their vision of the ideal causes them to set a high standard of perfection in everything they undertake, and they experience the most acute dissatisfaction when falling below this standard. I want to interject something. When I think of green and the beautifulness of earth, I also immediately call upon Archangel Raphael and his green healing light that knows right where to go. We can call it Reiki or universal healing energy, creator, source spiraling down. The effects are the same. The energy knows exactly where to go to heal us. I love green for that reason, and it's so beautiful and cooling. The civilization of ancient Greece in its height of glory, where the ideal was of a healthy mind and a healthy body, perhaps expressed the qualities of the green ray as fully as it has yet been expressed in the present cycle of evolution. Much the same was true of the early Egyptians when their architectural ability was most marked. In the green ray has also influenced India and China. When such an influence is paramount in a race, it seems to find expression in wonderful architecture, especially. Again, we see the influence of nature, which sometimes inspires and even controls architectural forms. The magic of sound in the creation of harmony and also in healing is fully understood by the evolved person on the fourth ray, so that frequently a child of this ray is devoted to music, finding it the nearest equivalent of eternal beauty. When the green ray influences the physical and lower mental bodies, an outstanding characteristic will be a love of harmony in the outer life. Such people will enjoy rhythmic habits, will be neat, orderly, and methodical in their lives, and will probably manifest a quiet taste in dress and in their homes. They will have a dislike of friction so strong that they become watchful and observant of the foibles of those around them, and develop much skill in the tactful handling of their fellow men. This ray frequently produces government officials, those who handle the public in some way, architects who work close to nature's designs, or herbalists, osteopaths, and chiropractors, whose ideal is to bring health and healing by harmonizing the physical life with nature and creator. Those who are striving to bring health and beauty through physical culture or dancing are giving practical expression on the green ray. On the mental plane, Saturn, ruler of the fourth ray, gives intellectual power and subtlety with a clear sense of logic. Perhaps the finest example of this ray working through the mental vehicles is seen in the true diplomat. The sure touch of the born statesman handling a difficult situation, where the human element is as uncertain as a barrel of high explosive, is as wonderful as the skill of the artist, humor of a gentle and universal appeal, and tact, which comes of observation and human understanding, are skillfully combined with logic, while a completely poised and charming manner adds to this persuasive power. A statesman who is evolved child of the green ray cannot but be a peacemaker. The full power and beauty of the fourth ray cannot be expressed by anyone who has not learned to cross the bridge of Saturn, the bridge which the soul gradually builds during the course of many incarnations, and which is the link between the higher and lower self. The majority of people are conscious mostly of things which concern their own material lives, and respond only to the pleasures and pains of personal life and the senses. At a certain point in evolution, however, there comes a breaking down of this limited outlook, often through devastating sorrow, which forces the person to look beyond the personal into the universal life. Realization that the divine life must permeate the human begins to dawn, an aspiration towards the full expression of Creator in man. This is the beginning of the building of the bridge of Saturn. As previously stated, this expression of divine beauty in matter is the instinctive longing of the child on the fourth ray. Until the soul awakens to some extent to the divine life, it will lack direction and will probably not show a marked link with any ray. This will especially be the case with those on the fifth, sixth, and seventh rays, which are dependent for their expression in physical life upon the soul's awakening. People coming under Saturn's ray are at their best coping with practical issues of life. They are realistic as regards time and energy, and know the value of order, method, and organization in coping with material problems. They are usually very time conscious, and the good Sagittarian will not waste his own time or anyone else's. He tries to be utterly reliable in his undertakings and relationships. Through experience, he or she is realistic and will not make rash promises, but what is undertaken will be done exactly and perfectly as one can. Capricorn, Saturn's earth sign, is linked with the 10th house of the horoscope, which clearly shows how Saturn erects the framework of man's physical existence. The 10th house rules one of the parents, whichever one has the most power over the child's outer life. It shows in the parent's position in the world, thus defining the child's place in society. Later, the 10th house indicates the employer and career, ambitions, and practical attainments in the world. Capricorn produces the most conscientious, steady, faithful workers, those who are capable of holding positions of heavy responsibility and trust. They make good employees, just and fair, but strict and precise. Although undemonstrative, they are devoted to their family and extremely faithful and steadfast in their affections. The keen sense of duty characteristic of the soul on Saturn's ray will raise it to positions of power and authority, often in connection with the government, or else these people will hold managerial positions in large organizations. Often they become the power behind the throne, holding within their grasp all the information, all the contacts which are needed to bring the edicts of authority into action. Through his air sign Aquarius, the complement of the sun sign Leo, Saturn teaches the soul how the creative fire of the sun has to be focused by thought to create order out of chaos of primordial matter. His is the power which causes thought to be crystallized into physical form. He or she builds the present mental outlook from the thought habits of the past, which accumulate and slowly crystalline into form, producing the actual physical shape of the body as well as the framework of the physical life. This is readily demonstrated in the way our thoughts affect our facial expressions and physical carriage, which becomes set in certain mold over the years. Saturn always brings to the soul some condition which has to be accepted, some fear, some limitation, some cross from which there appears to be no escape. In the physical body, this may be an intractable condition. On the soul plane, it might be some kind of mental inhibition or fear complex. On the mental plane, it can indicate the limitations of a rather narrow critical outlook. Every soul in incarnation feels in some way the disciplinary power of Saturn holding it back, giving it a sense of lack, of frustration or imprisonment, and so calling forth the qualities of patience, humility, perseverance, and steadfastness. The soul who has reached the point where it is turning from materialism towards the things of the spirit begins to recognize the power of Saturn, not as something destructive, but as pointing the way to victory over matter through the control of thought. It learns how good, positive, loving thought can transform not only the physical body, but also the circumstances of life. It is significant that the Jewish Sabbath is Saturday, Saturn's day, the day of rest and withdrawal from practical earthly concerns, the day for restoring and reestablishing the soul's relationship with Creator. The chief lesson for all who feel the limitation and restriction of Saturn is that they must learn to withdraw in thought from all the problems, the conflict, and the restrictions of the outer life, to turn inward and to focus mind and soul on the light of Creator which dwells in the heart. The task of Saturn is to teach the soul to bring the self-will into absolute harmony with the divine will. Every soul has deep need of its own rest, of periods when the ray of Saturn forces it to be still. It perhaps seems strange to connect the prosaic and practical Saturn with the ray of magic, but those who have some idea of the power of controlled thought will realize why ceremonial magic comes into the domain of Saturn as well as Jupiter. As Saturn forces the soul to come to grips with the problem and responsibilities of physical life, he also helps man to learn so to focus his thought power, that he brings into operation the divine will, which can recreate and recognize and reorganize physical atoms, and can perform apparent miracles. So at a higher level, Saturn is the planet of the adept, the one who has gained absolute control of the elements of his own being, and through this, of the physical atoms of the outer world. It is interesting that Saturn rules the continent of India, from which originates the teachings and practice of yoga, a form of physical, mental, and spiritual self-discipline which can eventually lead to mastery of the physical atoms. Yoga means union and signifies a yoking of the human with the divine will. I did not know that. Saturn rules old age, when the limitations of the human body are most felt. And it is interesting that yoga can be used to stop the body growing old. The true yogi regards his body as the temple of the living spirit, and his ultimate aim is to liberate that spirit through yoga or union with Creator. For this, the body must be trained into perfect condition and brought under complete control of the mind. And because mental development is so much slower than physical, bodily aging must be delayed so that the maturity of the body and mind may be enjoyed together. The power of Saturn is often symbolized by locked gates, the prison gates of the soul's own karma, which open only when release has been earned. I would remind you that that is now being freely given. Ask from a heart-based place. Ask your teams, your angels, your guides, your ancestors to assist you with this, because we are really, truly, amazingly in unprecedented times. Rock on, Dun, 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 dun. Saturn represents the straight and narrow way by which the soul can enter the kingdom of heaven. He stands for the divine law, which brings order out of chaos. Saturn is the great tester of the soul, allowing none to pass to the next stage until a particular lesson has been well and truly learned and the balance within the soul adjusted. Every soul is weighed in the scale of Saturn to determine what is needed to bring it to perfection. To say that he is exalted in Libra, the scales, is another way of saying that there must be a perfect balancing of the positive and negative elements in man's nature before he can gain mastery over the physical atoms and freedom from the wheel of rebirth. As ruler of Capricorn, Saturn is lord of the winter solstice, just as the moon, ruler of Cancer, the polar opposite, governs the summer solstice. This indicates how the soul of humanity is, as it were, nurtured within the great cycle or circle of Saturn, who is often represented as Old Father Time. This relationship of Saturn to the moon has deep spiritual significance. Through Cancer, the gate of man, the soul descends into incarnation, and through Capricorn, it transcends, perfected, into heaven. Venus and Mars rule the other arms of the cross within the circle, formed by the solstices and equinoxes. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, while both the moon and Saturn are exalted in the signs of Venus. Another name for Venus is Eros, the word soul, and the rearrangement of these letters gives us rose. which to the medieval mystics symbolized the sublime mystery of the struggle of the soul bound to the cross of matter, which gradually brings forth the fragrant rose of human and divine love. Thus, at Christmas, the winter solstice, we celebrate not only a human birth, but a deep cosmic mystery. In Greek mythology, the period when Saturn ruled the world was known as the Golden Age. Humanity is now coming onto the Aquarian Age, and the ray of its ruler Saturn will gradually be felt at all levels of consciousness and throughout the social order. As man learns to discipline and use the power of thought, he will increasingly respond to the ray of Uranus, the octave ruler of Aquarius, which, like Neptune, is a planet of magical power. Uranus will draw people into group enterprises, and most especially with those who are dedicated to the healing and upliftment of humanity by the power of thought. Under Aquarius, man, freed from the domination of the animal side of his nature, will become aware of his true relationship with Creator and the universe, and of his brotherhood with all humanity, and will proceed from the house to the divine state of being a creator himself. Paraphrasing a bit. Well, that was a lot to take in. Saturn is a big deal and very, very important in one's chart. And it will be exciting to learn what has shifted this last strawberry moon when 6 of the houses gained new rulership. And for that, we will have to ask Diana Bowles and her friend Val when they do their monthly shows together, which we also enjoy. So thank you very much for listening thus far. The next chapters I will be covering will have to do with the elements. And I look forward to hearing your comments about this, and if this is in fact helping you to remember your own clues, your own lives. Thank you so much for stopping by. Bye for now.